desert place. You're sufficient and surpassing. You wipe every tear away. These are our joyful proclamations. We come alive in you. Through every season you are faithful. You're making all things new. Proclaim our God's days with open arms. He welcomes us again. Sing our God's days with open arms. We're calling on His name. The garden bridge with the soul to repair what seems in vain. You're the harnesser of hardship. You give fullness in exchange. These are our joyful proclamations. We come alive in you. Through every season you are faithful. You're making all things new. Proclaim our God saves with open arms. He welcomes us again. Sing our God saves with open arms. We're calling on His name. So overflow, let your grace run deep, transform our hearts, and let us see your love break through the darkest parts of this world you love so much. So overflow, let your grace run deep, transform our hearts, and let us see your love break through the darkest parts of this world you love so much. Proclaim our God saves with open arms. He welcomes us again. Sing our God saves with open arms. We're calling. Proclaim our God saves with open arms. He welcomes us again. Sing our God saves with open arms. We're calling on His name. We're calling on His name. We're calling on His name.
In those words, what do they mean for our lives? And we're starting this morning with the title track of the album, Proclamations. And just before we get into that, I just want to invite the two people who actually wrote this to come along and tell us a little bit about what their thinking was behind this. Now that's Joe and Mike. And anytime you're ready, Joe. Oh my goodness, they've got notes. So both of you, Joe and Mike, you were involved in writing this song, Proclamations, which ends up as the title track of the album. Very, very nice it is too. Very lovely. Powerful. Not nice. Nice isn't a nice word. Where did you get the inspiration from? Proclamations. Where did the inspiration come from? Do you want to start? Go on in.
Hello. Okay, so Proclamations kind of had a bit of an evolution to it. It started off, I started to write a song after an incident that happened to me at work. I said happened to me. I work in health and social care, for those of you who don't know. And one of the patients that we were looking after died. And I was thinking about this person's life. I was thinking about the care that the person was given. And on a lot of reflection after it, I was kind of thinking about why some people get, why it's easy to care for some people and not so easy to care for other people. Because sometimes it can be difficult to care for people. So I started to write a song about how God's love is unconditional, and God doesn't choose favourites. God loves everyone, and He's a good God, and and we get to take part in serving people. But that song it kind of turned out a bit kind of melancholic and kind of like a sense of, and kind of like it was an ought rather than an overflow. So then, basically, then I started showing Joe some ideas. And there was one part of the song, though, which we actually kept, and it's still the bridge of Proclamations, and it's the overflow, let your grace run deep section. And that's the whole thing about your love break through the darkest parts. And for me, like, those parts are like those times in healthcare, the people that just need love, need support, need comfort, need advocacy, need all that God can bring. And so we started chatting, we started sharing some scripture. Isaiah 61 was one, and another one was inspired by Jan. And it's that Isaiah 58. And it says, I will tell you the kind of special day I want. Free the people you've put in prison unfairly and undo their chains. Free those to whom you are unfair and stop their hard labour. Share your food with the hungry and bring poor, homeless people into your homes. When you see someone who has no clothes, give them yours. And don't refuse to help your own relatives. Then your light will shine like the dawn, and your wounds will quickly heal. Your God will walk before you, and the glory of the Lord will protect you from behind. Then you will call out, Proclamations, and the Lord will answer. He will cry out, and he will say, here I am. And the whole thing was about, like, actually, like, the song before was more like about us doing the saving, and this song's about God's the one who saves. God's the one who brings new beginnings. And the light that we provide is his light, not our light. So it's all about him. It's all about him overflowing and bursting forth. And that's kind of the inspiration of the song. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Thank you, Mike. Joe, you had some input into this as well.
A little.
Sorry. Joe actually, like, sorry.
No.
He encouraged me so much. Like,
I think, one of my favourite parts of, like, this song, like, the story behind it, was, like, seeing Mike, and as you know, he's like a bit of a self-doubter, which is a quality we can share, I guess. But like, I think in that process, it was just about seeing what was at the heart of the song. And as was said, like those verses in Isaiah were really integral to the heartbeat of the church at the time. So we just tried to like latch onto that and dig into the scripture and be like, what's that about? And in the CEB version, which is the little verse we ended up including in like the booklet and the album, because the title that they'd given that section was Joyful Proclamations, and we were kind of like, yeah, I like the ring of that. It was just like, oosh. So it is in there. It's in there. It was just all about, I guess, like Mike said as well, like you got to give God all the glory, and it's like there's no stone that will go unturned. There's nothing he can't make new. So kind of like that lyric, you repair what seems in vain. It's kind of like, yeah, by our judgment, that might be done with, but actually God, he can turn anything around. And I think the part of that, to see like Mike struggle with this and be like, I don't even think it's a great idea, but then we like pushed it and waited on it and gave it more time, and then it turned into this song that really encouraged us, if no one else. And like that was like, for me, that was just like, well, that's kind of proof to us both that we can doubt what we can bring, but even the song itself, God gave it life, and I think made it something better than like either of us could have done by ourselves. Like that's the whole point of church.
Excellent. Now, here's a question that I haven't actually prepped you for. Aye, and I want a one-sentence answer. All right. If you were to say the proclamation that I want my life to be, so at the end of it all, what has your life proclaimed? What would that be? Tick, 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 tick. Bong! Who's going first? I gave you heads up on this, so you know. Joe told you. Oh, Joe.
It's kind of cheating. I'm going to steal more of the Bible, but come on. It's a good place to go. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. I think because it's just proof in my life each day that if people look at me, they'd be like, well, who are you to like lead worship? Who are you to do the things you do? And I'd be like, too right. But it's God. Do you know what I mean? He's done it all.
Really, I bet you wish you'd gone first now.
I guess it's kind of like the song. I want my life to kind of be a proclamation that God saves. And it's not just I'm proclaiming it in words, but I proclaim it in life. So when I interact with people, say at work, in healthcare and stuff, that they see God saves, they see his light, and that comes through in everything that I do.
That's wonderful. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. So we're going to have a look at this whole thing about proclamations together. I want to read from Mark's Gospel. This is Jesus talking about a really well-known story of his. Mark 4, verse 3, and verses 3 to 9. Very well-known story. Listen, a farmer went out to plant some seed, and as he scattered it across his field, some seed fell on a footpath, and the birds came and ate it. Other seed fell on shallow soil with underlying rock. The plant sprang up quickly, but it soon wilted beneath the hot sun and died because the roots had no nourishment in the shallow soil. Other seed fell among thorns that shot up and choked out the tender blades, so that it produced no grain. Still other seed fell on fertile ground and produced a crop that was 30, 60, and even 100 times as much as had been planted. Then he said, anyone who's willing to hear should listen and understand. So, have you ever had a secret, or perhaps not so secret, dream of being able to do something that you're either never going to get the opportunity to do, or if you do get that opportunity, you're never going to be particularly good at it? You lack the whatever it takes to do it, but you still got the dream nevertheless. Now, listening to the new album that many of us have, I wonder how many of us would just love to have the talent or the ability to write songs like that, to get an idea and just put it down in a song, and it ends up like one of those amazing tracks on this amazing, nice album. I wonder if you'd love to have the ability to play an instrument like what you hear on that album. I'd love to be able to write songs, love to be able to, but I'm just not wired up that way. I am wired up to do other things, and the reason I asked Joe and Mike that question at the end about what do you want, what would you love the proclamation of your life to be, is that at the end of my life and at the end of your life, our lives are going to proclaim something. It's going to proclaim something about you. Your life is going to proclaim something about you, about your values, about your priorities, about what was really important to you. Doesn't matter whether you're world famous or completely unknown, your life is going to proclaim something. It's going to proclaim what was really important to you. Now, if you're a Christian here this morning, or listening to this message on the podcast, the chances are you would say that your life is going to proclaim that you're following Jesus. You've been following Jesus these years. And in the words of the psalm, Psalm 145, verse 6, it says, your awe-inspiring deeds will be on every tongue. I will proclaim your greatness. That's what a lot of us would want to say our lives end up being all about. If you're a Christian, that's what you'd like to think that you're doing. If you're a parent, we'd like to think that our lives will proclaim his kids, her kids, were more important to them than anything else. If we're in business, we'd like to think we'd like that proclamation to be that, well, they were honest, they were ethical, and they went about doing business in an honourable way. The problem is that although every single person's life is going to proclaim something about them, not every proclamation is what we want it to be. Because despite our best intentions, and despite what we would like to think about ourselves, our attitudes and our actions and our priorities often display something else. You get to the end and it didn't display what you wanted it to display. It didn't proclaim what you wanted it to proclaim. Do you remember, a number of us will, because I've talked about him before, Alfred Nobel. As I say, I've mentioned it before, and when we think of Alfred Nobel, we think of the Nobel Peace Prize, amongst other things. The prize is annually awarded to the person who's done the most to promote some aspect of peace over that past year. Now, this year, it was awarded jointly to Kailash Satyarthi and to Maulana Yousafzai. Probably. Yousafzai, I beg your pardon. And they were awarded this, in the words of the Nobel Committee, for the struggle against the suppression of children and young people and for the right of all children to education. You might remember Malala on the right there. She was the Pakistani schoolgirl who was shot in the head by a Taliban terrorist on the way to school one day. Left for dead. She survived. She became an advocate for education for children. But Alfred Nobel, as you probably know, was not always that altruistic. The proclamation of his life was set to be something very different. Because Alfred Nobel's previous claim to fame was that he invented dynamite. He was once nicknamed the Merchant of Death. Da, da, da. Crumbs, that's a nickname. Then his brother, Emile, sadly died. And instead of Emile's obituary appearing in the paper, the obituaries got switched. The one that had been prepared for Alfred in advance was published by mistake. Alfred was able to read his own obituary. And he realized that the proclamation of his life would be that he was the merchant of death, having invented dynamite. That's it. That's my proclamation. That was his proclamation of his life. In a flash, it came to him. Every person's life proclaims something. Not every life proclamation is worthy. Now, he just knew the proclamation of my life, it may be successful, but it's not worthy. My life is worth more. It needs to proclaim something better. So, just throw this out there. What does yours proclaim? What does your life proclaim? Probably you're not known as the merchant in death down at the old Bull and Bush, but what does your life proclaim? Is the proclamation of your life worthy? Have you ever thought about that? Probably not really, but I have. It caused me to walk away from a safe, financially advantageous career in the computer industry, start a new life as a church leader. I want the proclamation of my life to be worthy. I don't have to be successful, I just want it to be worthy. But for so many people, the proclamation is not worthy. For example, the proclamation that I risked little. I lived an average life. I achieved an average outcome. Now, that's the first proclamation, life proclamation that Jesus talks about in the parable that he told that I read earlier. It describes the person who says, I'm not going to let any of that emotional stuff about God changing lives and giving hope and launching people on an incredible adventure. I'm not going to let any of that into my life. I've got what I want in my life. My life is okay. It's in control. It may not be the grand adventure that I once thought it was going to be, but hey, this is life. At least I can cope with it. And that's an okay proclamation. The outcome of that kind of life proclamation will probably ensure that you do indeed live an average life. Not hot, not cold, just lukewarm. That kind of life. You know what I'm talking about? Safe. Is that worthy? Well, Jesus thought not. He assessed that proclamation and he said, I know all the things that you do, that you're neither hot nor cold. I wish that you were one or the other. But since you're like lukewarm water, neither hot nor cold, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. It's just not worthy. It's a proclamation, and it's one that many people settle for, but it's not worthy. We can do better. You can do better than play safe. Stay in control. Well, on the subject of worthy or not, Jesus points to another life proclamation. It's the proclamation that I value comfort and convenience above character and commitment. Now, we don't set out in life to say, do you know what? Forget the character and commitment malarkey. I'm going through life looking for comfort and convenience. That is going to be what my life ends up. We don't make that proclamation at the start. What I'm talking about is, what's your life adding up to? Because to keep a commitment and to choose to do the right thing always costs. And that's always in conflict with comfort and convenience. Now, of course, for most of us, the proclamation of our lives that we end up with, it just happens one decision at a time. There's not some grand plan to be some kind of comfort and convenience junkie. It's just one decision at a time. One broken promise at a time. One good intention that we don't see through at a time. They start off as blips, but they end up as the overall proclamation. The proclamation that when the tough decisions need to be made, comfort and convenience won the day. And it generally starts off like this. If you use this phrase too often, you'll know you're in danger. The phrase is, you know what? The phrase, you know what, means I'm about to go for comfort and convenience. You know what? I know I said I'd do that, but you know what? The rocky soil represents those who hear the message and receive it with joy. But like young plants in such soil, their roots don't go very deep. At first they get along fine, but then it's, you know what? They wilt as soon as they have problems, or they're persecuted because they believe the word. The initial intentions were good, but when those intentions become inconvenient, they wilt. You ever done that? Because I have. I've got to be honest with you, I've done it more than I want to have done it. This is more of a feature of my life than I'd like it to be. Gee, I'd love to say that my word's always been my bond. That I've always stuck to my commitments. I know that's not true. I know that all too often I've opted for comfort and convenience. This is me. I do. I opt for comfort and convenience. But I don't want it to be the proclamation of my life. I don't want that to be the sum total, because it's not worthy of the life that I could have led. I want my proclamation to be something better. Not just that I opted for the easy life, that the end always seemed to justify the means, that there was always a reason why I couldn't stand up and be counted. I want my life's proclamation to be better. I want it to be the kind of proclamation that's described like this. Since God has so generously let us in on what he's doing, we're not about to throw up our hands and walk off the job just because we run into occasional hard times. We refuse to wear masks and play games. It's up there on the screen any minute now. We don't maneuver and manipulate behind the scenes, and we don't twist God's word to suit ourselves. Rather, we keep everything we do and say out in the open, the whole truth on display, so that those who want to can see and judge for themselves in the presence of God. And you're not going to get that by just settling for comfort and convenience, through going for what feels good rather than what's right. So, what is going to be the proclamation of your life? Truth be told, we don't really have the time or the inclination to spend too much time on questions like that, do we? We just don't have this navel-gazing time. What do I want the big picture of my life to look like? Let me build a plan. We just get on with life. The fact is, life is far too busy, and there are so many, many competing priorities in any one ordinary day. The truth is, we live distracted lives. We do. I do. And yet, unless we do something about that, take some sort of stand, those distractions are going to become the proclamation of our lives. The proclamation of your life could very well be, she was distracted. He was distracted. That is a genuine proclamation that can be our life proclamation. The proclamation of, I allow myself to get distracted. And this can be really serious. Listen to this newspaper article. It's from something called the Huffington Post. It's like an online newspaper. This article is more of a confession in print, really. It goes like this. Last week, I almost killed my daughter. It started off as really any other week ever does. My husband had been travelling pretty much non-stop for nearly the entire month. Whether we wanted to or not, we were all falling into a fairly regular rhythm without him, at least Monday to Friday. With school and activities, and for better or worse, the days seemed to move rather quickly, but by evening, all three of us were stretched thin. Collectively, we'd all seem to peak at maximum crabbiness, somewhere around 6 p.m. It was shortly after this time, last Wednesday night, that I brought the kids upstairs to help them get washed up for bed. My daughter had an upset stomach for most of the day, but I hadn't really thought much of it. She was otherwise happy and playing and generally herself. I did know that she was very tired. Still, we were a good hour and a half from her usual bedtime of around 8 p.m. I put her in the bath and let it start to fill, and left the room to go start the shower for my son. This is something I've taken to doing quite often with her. She's coming up to 4, and I'm less concerned about leaving her alone in the tub. Plus, the need to get both baths and showers started at the same time feels like a multitasking necessity when it's the end of the day, and I'm slogging through it on my own. I love them, but I'm just so tired. I don't want to rush through their bath and bedtime, but I do. Because I just want to collapse on the couch at 8 p.m. Just be with my own thoughts and my own space. Bath time has increasingly become yet another thing to check off the list. And so I'm more rushed and careless than I should be. So, I left her for about 2 minutes while I went to go find my 5-year-old and get him in the shower. I heard the ping on the iPad and saw an email from my friend. There was zero urgency about responding. But inexplicably, I felt the need to, right then and there. And in doing so, I left her alone in the tub for 2 minutes. On any other night, this would have been fine. But this night was different. She was really tired, and the water was warm, and she just fell asleep. Completely and totally asleep. I've never seen anything like it before in my life. I went back in 2 minutes later. And by the grace of God, she had managed to fall asleep sitting up, slumped against the side of the tub. But it wouldn't have been much longer, how much longer, seconds, before she would have slipped under the water. She would have drowned. It would have been entirely my fault. I screamed, I slapped her face, she didn't wake up. But she seemed to be breathing and was otherwise all right, just asleep. I lifted her out of the tub, out of the water, and carried her into her room, where she took the world's weirdest, wettest, shortest power nap ever. And at 6:30 promptly woke up, refreshed, soaking wet, and ready to play, and with zero understanding of the gravity of what could have happened, or almost could have happened. I felt like I couldn't breathe. For a while now, I've felt that I'd been losing the ability to single task. We talk so much, this is in parentheses, we talk so much about multitasking, as if this is a good thing. How able are you to single task? To actually be there when you're doing something? That is to say, the ability to do one thing well at a time. I recognize that this hasn't happened in isolation. What I'm feeling is a larger reflection of a culture that has literally consumed us over the past 5 years or so. In particular, becoming a parent during the rapid rise of the era of tablets and smartphones. I have lost the ability to be present and do one thing at a time. It scares me. And on this night, my inability to focus could have cost me everything. It wouldn't have taken more than 2 minutes or 2 seconds to change our lives forever. I can't even begin to process how much I regularly try to squeeze into those same 2 minutes. And how much I could have lost in those 2 minutes. Now, the thorny ground represents those who hear and accept the good news, but all too quickly the message is crowded out by the cares of this life, the lure of wealth, the desire for nice things. So listen, no crop is produced. It is frightening how easy it is to get distracted. Be honest, is that likely to be the proclamation of your life? The way it's going? Now, which group in this next verse would you put yourself in? An intelligent person aims at wise actions, but a fool starts off in many directions. Don't let that be the proclamation of your life. You know, there's another proclamation that can sum up your life. I choose life. But the good soil represents those who hear and accept God's message and produce a huge harvest, 30, 60, or even 100 times as much as have been planted. Truth be told, that sort of life, a life marked with the proclamation, I choose life, is the only life to live. And here's the thing, Alfred Nobel was not a one-off. The only person who gets to hear his eulogy and review his life proclamation in the light of it. The truth is we can all have an Alfred Nobel moment. We can all decide that the proclamation of our lives, the message that our lives add up to, can change. We can all decide the proclamation of my life is going to be a worthy one. I'm going to live for a worthy cause. The cause of Christ. I choose life. So I just throw it out there. What's the proclamation of your life? I'm not saying that I have this all together, that I have it made. Oh my goodness, boy do I not say that. But I am well on my way, reaching out for Christ, who has so wondrously reached out for me. Friends, don't get me wrong. By no means do I count myself an expert in all of this, but I've got my eye on the goal, where God is beckoning us onward to Jesus. I'm off and running. And get this, I am not turning back, because I want the proclamation of my life to be worthy. How about you? Well, let's pray, shall we? Lord Jesus, I thank you that you call us to a life that proclaims something worthy, something bigger, something better than just the sum total of the little decisions that we fell into, or the little lapses, or the little distractions. You call us to something worthy that we can proclaim. I choose life. I choose life. And if we have become distracted here this morning, if we have lost the ability to single task, if even right now we're surreptitiously checking our emails or our Facebook status or our tweets as I am preaching, put it down. Be in the present. Single task on this one thing. I choose my life proclamation to be worthy, to be following Jesus. I choose life. I choose it in your name, Lord. Amen.